All right. Hello and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Can. I'm here with Linkso, and this is another one of the Master Gardener classes here. Today we have Kathy Fleming and Cindy Morris, and they're going to be talking about herbs and edible flowers. So it's going to be an exciting class. This class is being recorded. As always, you can find the recorded class under Linkso's community resources page, which I've shared the link via chat. So check that out. And then feel free to send in your questions regarding the talk, during the talk via chat as well. We will address those questions towards the end of the class. So the presentation will go on for hopefully an hour and a half or more. And then when we have time, we'll go ahead and address those questions. So let's also, everyone's muted too, so chat is the only way to ask questions now. So we will officially begin the presentation. Welcome, Kathy and Cindy. The floor is all yours.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, welcome to our talk on herbs and edible flowers. We are UCCE Master Gardeners. We are volunteers trained and certified by the University of California to provide community service and educational outreach that helps gardeners and community organizations sustainably create a healthy environment. We just graduated a class of, I'm not sure of how many, 40, I think, maybe people or something like that. So we just had graduation. Classes are, I think it's 16 weeks. And our next class will be 2024. And if you're interested in becoming a Master Gardener, check out our website, which we'll put up a little bit later. And it gives the information on how to request to be in a Master Gardener. Okay, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kathy, and we're going to get started on our presentation.
Thanks, Cindy.
You're welcome.
Okay, why isn't it going to the next slide? Oh my goodness. Anyway, I'll get it together, I promise. But anyway, as you can see from this list, Cindy and I have a lot to cover today. I wanted to make sure that you could see everything that we were going to get involved with, speak with some details in these topics so you can see where we're going with everything. It starts with introducing and goes all the way to using, and we have fun with it in between. So any questions, make sure to write in the chat and we will get to them. So what is an herb? I'm assuming that some of you have herbs already in your gardens, that you've planted things. I know you've probably eaten them in foods and while you're cooking and everything like that. But what actually is an herb? Well, an herb is, any plant that it says up there, like with leaves and flowers and roots and everything, and grows. But there are three, I like to call these families. There are three different families of herbs, just like vegetables, just like landscape plants. They're all the perennials. So the perennial is the plant or the herb that grows year after year. It has a lifetime with it. It's more than 2 seasons. And you see perennial herbs growing in nature a lot of times. You see lavender planted, that's a perennial. You see, we typically think of the Mediterranean herbs, which are like on the hillsides of Europe and things like that. So that's a perennial herb. They come back every year. They're hardy. An annual, like what could an annual be? An annual is one that lasts 1 year. Typically, a very common one is basil. Basil, we grow it when we plant our tomatoes. A lot of times we plant our basil and it lasts 1 year. At least at my house, it lasts 1 year. Then there's the third one, the biennial. So the biennial is grown from seed the first year. It flourishes. It has a great time growing and everything. And the second year, it grows from its roots. What happens on the second year typically is it will set seed, it will flower, set seed, and it will die back. Biennials last 2 years, if they last that long. One example of that is parsley. Parsley used to be at my house, and I live in the in San Bruno area, it used to last 2 years. So before it would flower. So I keep one fresh and then one that's flowering because I keep them for the birds and bees, as you'll see later in this presentation. Parsley is a tender biennial. And now that it's getting hotter everywhere, a lot of times it doesn't last 2 years. Mine now only lasts 1 year. Cindy's definitely just lasts 1 year. Another example of a biennial is caraway and dill. So you have to just watch what, if it starts to flower, then we're going to talk about that later too. I did want to explain that the photos on here, they're all from our gardens, most of them. And we tried to tag what is what. So in this particular pot, you have oregano and thyme. It looks like chives. And so just wanted to tell you how we operate it. Okay, so we should move on. Garden and growing basics, Cindy.
Yeah, I'm going to talk to you about how we grow herbs and what their needs are. Growing herbs is really a practical idea because you will always have fresh herbs. That's really nice. A pack of herbs and you need a tablespoon, and you don't know what to do with the rest. If they're in your own garden, you could walk out and pick a tablespoon, and you'll have what you need. They're also a great way they're great for crafting, for eating, for gifting. It's really fun to make a little bouquet of herbs. And, if you're for a housewarming gift or hostess gift, it's really fun to take that. People really like it. They can use the herbs when you're done, and they can use it in their cooking or their beverages. And it's very considerate of you to do that. So our herbs need 6 to 8 hours of sun a day. Some herbs will grow in a little less sun. However, the sun is what gives the herbs the volatile oil that's needed for the taste and all the flavor. So you don't want to skip the sun. Mint, parsley, cilantro will grow in a little less light, and they'll be okay. But most herbs like full sun, 6 to 8 hours of sun a day. When you're planting your herbs, consider how high, like rosemary can get quite large, and your parsley and that sort of thing should be in the front of the bed. It's nice to have it close to your kitchen so you can just walk out and pick it when you're cooking. I have herbs. I did have herbs on the side of my house growing, and I would go out with a flashlight at night trying to pick herbs in the winter, in the fall. So anyway, if you can grow next to your house with the correct environmental requirements, I would do so. Water, they don't need, Kathy said, on a hillside in the Mediterranean countries. They get little water, and so they don't like to be overwatered. I would amend the soil so that if you have clay soil, which most of us do, with a nice garden loomy soil, and then plant your herbs and maybe put some compost on top, and then maybe some mulch on top of that to keep the water in the soil. I don't fertilize herbs because I don't want them to grow, because once herbs grow, they want to flower, and I don't want them to flower. I want them to stay somewhat small, so I don't encourage them to grow. I would give them a little phosphorus, but not heavy on nitrogen, because that'll make them grow. Herbs are great in containers. They're drought tolerant. Most of them are drought tolerant, and they do well in our situation today of not too much water. If you can, use drip irrigation, always. It's always a good idea if you can put it in your pots. Most people grow herbs in containers. And don't forget to use some native herbs. I have an herb garden down at San Carlos City Hall. And I grow, I have a sage. It's huge. It's beautiful, silver leaves. It's a native sage and it's lovely. So don't forget to add some native herbs also. Yerba buena is nice. Yerba buena mint is nice. It's a low ground cover that's does okay in a little shadier area. And so that's basically what you need to know. You need 6 to 8 hours of sun a day, a good well draining soil that's got some nutrition in it, and do not overwater. So with those things in mind, and I also wanted to say that if you're a beginner gardener, herbs are a great way to start because they are so easy to grow. You'll have success and you'll feel so generated to grow new things, and next will be a cucumber or something. So start out with herbs.
Yay.
Okay, you're on,
Sounds
Kath.
good. Before I switch the slide, I want everyone to notice the photo in there and the mix in the landscape plants. This is my front yard. That's full of lavender in this circle area here. There's an artichoke that I get lots of artichokes from each year. And behind that is a regular landscape plant. That's a heather or something, but just shows that you can mix things with the same water levels. So,
And if
okay, so let's go.
very true.
No.
You want to put the same plants that have the same water need to get.
Yes. Sure. And so we started with some edible flowers a while ago. We actually enjoyed them in salad because they looked pretty and everything. I went to Cindy's house and we had an amazing chive flower in a salad once, and I just flipped out and I said, okay, we have to start doing this. So edible flowers are one thing. If you are growing them and you know there's no spray on them and you know you can use them to eat, that's where you use them. If you get them from a friend and they weren't sprayed, fine. Farmer's market, you really have to make sure that nothing is sprayed. But I'm a big flower eater, ask my family. And these are calendula. Calendula has a different little taste on the petals. So, but they're pretty in a bowl and they're used for things that I don't necessarily use them on, not necessarily food, but they can be eaten. They're an edible flower. And the middle pot shows a sage in there, and the little purple flowers on top is the sage flower. So herbs produce great flowers if you're going to let your herb flower. The reason to let your herb flower, because remember, once it flowers, like Cindy said, the plant isn't going to be as nutritious and luscious and deep tasting because it went to flower, and that's just the way it works. But the flowers are used, you can use those in foods. That's a scented lemon geranium in the back of that, and that's pretty good too. And then, of course, the common one here, nasturtiums, you see all over the place, but this is my favorite nasturtium because the leaf itself, this is very tender. It's a little mild watercress flavor. The flower is really pretty. I take the stamen out of the middle and I put the flower in the salad, either whole or I rip it in half. So I get more. But what you want to do is use them as you would any delicate green. Swish them in a little cool water, let them sit on your countertop, with on a towel, and then you can add them to whatever you want. You can cold foods are easy to put in. If it's warm, you want to garnish with it after, that kind of thing. Anything dried like lavender, we use our lavender for all sorts of things, and sugars, to bake in sachets. But that's the edible flowers. And let's go to our pollinators. Where do all these flowers come from? Now, this isn't a pollinator class, of course, but it's a big part of growing herbs if you start to grow a lot, like both Cindy and I have. This is the plant on the right with the purple flower is the anise hyssop. Oh, I don't think you're going to be able to see this, but this is a little baby. It's Agastachi or anise hyssop. This is the leaf part of it. And towards the middle end of summer, all the flowers start forming on that. And the anise swallowtail, that butterfly on it, loves it. Now the little caterpillar on the side is the caterpillar of that particular butterfly. And they love a lot of things. They love celery, parsley, anise hyssop, just things in the family there that they grow on. And it's pretty amazing. So what I like to do is to mix everything, like you saw in that previous picture with the lavender and the artichoke. I put things in with the same watering needs and try to create a balance and let nature take its course. So you can do that if you don't have a lot of ground. You can do that with a container too, which we're going to go through some container things after. So let's
You know, Kathy, the calendula is called the poor man's saffron.
Oh, that was it. I was trying to think and I couldn't think of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting, huh? That's okay. So you can use it. And I guess savory. It would be good for savory.
Peppery tasting.
Yeah. So now we're going to move on to different propagation methods. And the whole thing, propagating is an inexpensive way to get new plants from the plants you have at home already without spending $5.95 for a little 4-inch thing. Stem cuttings and dividing produce usually genetically identical transplants if you're doing it correctly as your parent plant. So, and seeding is a little different. So we're going to go over each one. Cindy's going to start with a really cool stem cutting.
Yes, stem cuttings. This is an asexual method of propagation. There's sexual, which is by seed, and asexual, which is by cuttings. I love to do cuttings, take cuttings, because I get more plants for free. So it's really pretty easy to do. We want to do herbs when they're growing, when they're fresh, usually spring. And we want to take it from the part of the plant that is growing, that's got growth, that's got the meristemic cells, which are dividing and creating new growth. And so it's ready to grow. So we that's a good place to pick from. So this is the top of a plant, and you could see the bulging places in the stem, meristemic cells, and yeah, right where the red dot was here. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut. We want to make our cuttings about. There's different kinds of cuttings. There's softwood cutting. Most herbs are softwood cuttings. There are some like rosemary that would be semi. But this particular thing is a softwood cutting. So we're going to cut right below the node at the bottom, and we're going to cut at a slant. Cut it as a slant, because that indicates to us that it's the bottom. Sometimes when we take all the leaves off, we don't know if it's the top or the bottom, but the stem knows which top and bottom. So we want to put the right one in the soil. And then we go to the top of the stem. And we're going to cut these leaves off. We're going to cut those 2 big leaves off. Any new growth that's growing in the center to grow. We don't want energy going. So once we've done all that, we take some root hormone, which I have here, root hormone, and we're going to dip our plant in the hormone. You could put it in a little container and then dip it. If you want to make sure you take a good, fresh, healthy stem. You don't want to pick a diseased stem or a stem with bugs or anything like that. So once you get the root hormone on it, you shake it off because you don't want too much root hormone. And then you take your, you have a container, a 4-inch container would work with loose draining soil, maybe some perlite in it or vermiculite. A lot of people just like to propagate in perlite. I prefer to propagate in a little soil, soil with some perlite in it. Then you make a hole. I use my trusty chopstick, and I make a hole nice and hard because I don't want the root hormone to come off when I put it in the soil. And then I gently put that node at the bottom in the soil and put it down as far as I can go. And then I water it, and then I can cover it with a plastic bag, or I could put it in a plastic container, you know, like a salad box. I could put it in that if I wanted. I like to put them in pots and put plastic over them, like a little greenhouse, but you have to make sure you don't rot the plant, because you will rot the plant. And then in maybe 6 to 12 weeks, you might have a root. You can tell by when you pull up on the plant, if it tugs a little, there's a root in there. If not, put it back and give it another chance to grow. Make sure it's well watered and keep it wet, damp, not wet, and you'll have a new plant.
Well,
so I think that's everything.
that sounds like fun.
Yeah, it is fun. I just got some, I was at the beauty shop, and she has a coffee tree, and she's actually got coffee on it and little flowers.
Oh, wow.
And
You mean she's got coffee beans on it?
so I took a cutting of it, and I'm going to plant and see if I can get a coffee plant too. And another thing, when you propagate, always propagate 3 or 4 stems, because not all are going to take. So it's kind of like securing yourself with numbers. If you plant 4, maybe 1 will work, maybe 2.
Yeah.
So never just plant 1, several. Okay.
I like doing stem cuttings with scented geraniums and things that because they have big nodes on them too, just like this sample plant does, that your picture there.
Yeah, it's so rewarding to do propagation, any kind of propagation. And when you're successful, it's like, wow, this is great. I'm really, I did it.
Yeah, it's fun. And then you can share plants with others. Another way of sharing plants. Okay. Took me a while, but I don't know if that's right. Did I lose Cindy?
There you go, dividing.
Yes. Okay. So here it is. It's there.
Yep.
Sometimes I might lose your connection once in a while. So another way of adding plants to your yard and your friends and your relatives and things is to divide them. Now you might wonder, what is she talking about dividing? Well, it's just like taking a plant out of its container, which, I put my little laser pointer away, but I'm going to get it out, my trusty laser pointer. I'm going to get it out again because I want to make sure that you see, this is an oregano plant. This was a couple years ago. And it was really compacted in its little 4-inch container. You see all the roots there. And how many times do we get plants like that, or we leave them there for a couple months and they get all wrapped around with roots? It was springtime. It was ready to plant this, and it needed to get divided, I thought. So you want to make sure that you water anything you're going to divide the day before at least, so that your root ball is intact and you're not pulling something out and going to have soil all over the place. So you want to make sure that you can work with the plant. So you don't want it sopping wet. Again, it's moist, so your root ball is contained. You can use any kind of sharp object you want. I use a hori knife, which our new Master Gardener class just got as a gift. And I think it's wonderful. But anyway, a hori-hori knife, you don't have to use hori-hori knife, depends with a nice sheath. Some people just use a kitchen.
I love mine.
Yeah, I love mine too, a kitchen tool and things like that. So I recommend the hori-hori knife. You want to do this in the spring, like I said earlier, but because that's when you're going to be replanting things, and that's when the hormones are just starting to flourish. So it's a good time. Let's see if I can get the next page to come up.
You know, Kathy, there are hormones in the roots also. There's growing material in the roots also.
Okay, cool.
So that's why it would be a good time to propagate by
Yes.
season.
So you want to just cut, you notice how the hand is on top of the knife. You always want your hand on top of the knife. You want to cut in half right from where the plant is at the top all the way down through the roots, through the root ball. You want to be able to trim the roots. Let's see. Right now, you can see on the cut version, if it's big enough on your screen, I don't know, but you can see all the roots in there. So it cut straight down. To get rid of this so I usually mix just a little tiny bit of compost in with my soil. I have a potting soil in there if I'm planting in a container. If I'm in the ground, I have, my other soil. I don't use fertilizers, I use compost. But you have to use a light hand with your compost and put it when you're going to plant it down in the hole, because you don't want it to burn your plant. So you just have to be cautious. If your compost is very much alive, like it's from your backyard, or it's a diesel version, it's a real alive version, just use a tiny bit, because they don't really need fertilizing at this point. So you're going to put it in your container. This particular plant made 4 little oreganos, and they're all grown up now around the neighborhood and at my friends. You put it in the container and you make it even, let it settle, put around the top. I trim the top a little bit so it's not quite so long, so it has a chance to say, yeah, I'm a great plant and I'm gonna start growing. And you want to water it and just keep it as a new plant. Let me get rid of this laser so I can change the slide for everyone. So this is where, if this is where we take questions. So if you have any questions on this, just write them in chat and we'll get them at the end. So now we're going to learn how to seed with Cindy, if she's not frozen. Cindy, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, because your picture froze, but it's on seeds right now, sowing seeds.
Okay, sowing herb seeds. This is the asexual propagation method. Just a little bit about a seed. A seed is a plant is fertilized by a bee or a fly or a bird or whatever. And then the seeds that the plants produce are fertile. So we can either buy them or we can pick them off our plants from last year and save them. And then we're going to plant them. So the plant has inside of it, that's what's going to make the plant grow. So we're going to get some good loose potting soil, just like we do for our other cuttings. And we're going to if we buy seed packets, we're going to look at the back of the seed packet and we're going to read it, and we're going to take it somewhat. We're going to follow the instructions, but remember, some of these are written in the East, so some of them are not really relevant to, so you can plant, pretty, so then we're going to get our soil either in a tray or in a small container, however you prepare to do it, or in the soil itself, in the garden soil. You can amend the garden soil so it's nice and loose and loomy, because when we place the seed in the soil and it starts to grow, we want to invite the roots to start growing. And in order for the roots to grow, we need air circulation around the bottom of the plant that starts to grow. As you can see here, this plant is starting to grow, and those leaves, I don't know, Kathy, if you could point to the leaves on the second to the left, second to the right, the cotyledons.
The side, since I can't hear you, I don't know.
Well, if the second plant on the right,
Oh, on the right?
out,
I don't know if I can.
yes, on the right,
Is this it?
right there.
Okay.
Those two little, let me see if I can, yeah. Well, anyway,
Up
those
here.
are cotyledons.
Oh, right here. This is the
Those
cotyledons.
are cotyledons. And the plant sends those up to nourish the ovary in the seed so that it can grow the true leaves, which are on top of the cotyledons. You can see how different they look. We never want to yank a seedling out when it's just got cotyledons. It won't survive. It has to have true leaves. It has to have at least 3 or 4 true leaves before we can, pluck it out and transplant it into a bigger container or whatever. Once we do that, we put it in our container. And once it's got 3 or 4 leaves, you put it in the container. We can put it on a heating pad to keep it warm so that it grows.
Hey, Cindy, let's try turning your video off because your bandwidth
you can
seems to
buy
be
that,
very low.
Turn my
Cindy,
video off.
yeah, let's just try turning your video off so that way we could hear you.
It's hard
bit
to
better.
hear. It's hard to hear you, Cindy.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I think that's better already.
Is that better?
Yeah, let's try it. Yeah.
I'm sorry. You should have told me before. I hope you guys all heard everything I said.
Uh-oh.
So we're just about at the end of seeds now. So let me just do a review here. So we want to take our seeds and we want to plant them. We have a seed that's fertile, that's been fertilized by bees or butterflies or whatever. And we put it in the soil, either in a container, in the soil, or in a tray. And we plant it to the depth that the seed package tells us. Usually it's between 1/2 and 1/4 inch. And we cover it with soil and we wait for it to grow. It grows 2 little cotyledons, which are they're not true leaves. That supports the seed so that it can grow roots. And then once the roots start growing, the leaves will start growing on top. And then we're ready to transplant it. Once it's got 3 or 4 good true leaves, which are on top, we'll be able to plant it into the next container size. We could put it on a heating mat. Sorry, my voice is dry. We could put it on a heating mat to inspire it to grow, to keep it warm. It'll help grow. That's not a heating mat like for your back. That's a heating mat for seedling. And then we want to water it and put a plastic bag over it. Okay.
Well, those are nice. So once Cindy mentioned when we want to transplant it. So these are just the little babies. They're very, very new. With the end ones have true leaves on the top. So then we see a 6-pack or something, whatever you want to call this, of this is rosemary. And these were grown at Elkis Ranch for our spring garden market. And just what do we do with these now that we have all these? We want to transplant a plant. And I basically use these 4-inch containers because they're easy to show. And when we're live, we can bring things and show them. So this, we would just want to transplant this. We don't want to divide it. It's not ready for dividing yet. It's just ready to thrive in your garden somewhere. So again, like the dividing instructions, we want to make sure that they're moistened. we want to make sure they are wet. We were doing a little herb talk at the spring garden market at the fairgrounds a few weeks ago. And I brought a plant over I wanted to show, and I turned it upside down. I thought it had been moistened and it wasn't. And Cindy said, you better not dump that because the soil goes all over. So if you've ever done it before, you know, if it's not well moistened, the soil is going to end up on your feet. So moisten the herb well. You want to lift it from the container, whether you take it and turn it upside down and gently coax it out, or you can coax it out anyway, but gently do that. Sometimes you spread the root ball, or you just gently fool with it a little bit to loosen it up so it doesn't stay in a tight little ball, because when they're growing in these containers, they can get that circular motion. Usually if it's fairly new, it won't get that. But like you saw on the dividing plant, that happens. So you want to make sure your soil, if you're growing in the ground, that your soil is twice as big, or your container is twice as big, because it's gonna fill it. And again, I use the potting mix or of some kind of a blend and put a little bit of compost in there. Place your herb in there and get it to the right height you want. If you need to add soil, go ahead and fill it gently and put more soil around it so it's nice in there. I water it then, but I also have been putting mulch over the soil, and that's another little to keep the moisture in the soil and not evaporating right away, especially with these perennial herbs. So this is another one of the Mediterranean herbs: rosemary, thyme, marjoram, that you want. Tarragon's there too, but tarragon is a tender perennial. It's a little fussier than these other hardier ones. So that's as far as transplanting goes. As if you're transplanting, let's see, an annual like basil, and you might, my basils, because they're next to my tomatoes, they get the fertilizer that the tomato gets. That's just the way it is, because they're in the same soil pan, so to speak. So they get a little different. And we're going to talk about that in maintenance too. It's like, how do you maintain these annuals and how do you maintain the perennials? So the next slide has to do with the containers. I just wanted to tell you when I'm getting there, Cindy's going to talk about it, but these 3 containers were in my backyard, and I just want to, I had to get them all out of the way so no one would trip over them. So I just stacked them, and they ended up staying stacked that whole season, and plus some of the next year. So at the bottom you have thyme and oregano. The middle one, that's a great sage that's still thriving now, and the rosemary on top. So you can do all sorts of things. So go for it, Cindy. Hello. Cindy, are you there? I see.
I'm still transplanting. Have you moved? Okay, great. Now I can see it. So growing herbs in containers is a great idea. If you live in an apartment or have a small yard, you can get a container, as Kathy's done here, and plant several different herbs in a small space.
Yeah, we both love containers.
And that's great. Herbs have small roots, so they do well. Yes, they do well in containers. And there's containers. There's terracotta. There's metal. There's the glazed ceramic. All different kinds of things. So pick what you like. And of course, since the herbs are in a container, they will require a little more water than if they were in the ground. So you might want to water them a couple times a week and they'll be happy. You want to arrange your herbs so that they don't overcrowd each other. You don't want to put too many herbs in the pot, because they'll start competing for food and water and everything else. So put a little space between them, and they'll be much happier. They'll thrive. And you want to keep them fairly small in the container. So you'll pinch the tops off at the node. So you see a node and then you'll pinch right above the node, and then new growth will come from there. Plus, your herbs like to be pinched and used. They like that. If you don't, they'll get leggy, or they'll bloom and go to seed, and that you don't want that, because that changes the taste of the herb. And so keep your herbs cut back, pinch it back, and you'll have a happy herb. Something really fun to do is to for gifts.
I think I lost you, Cindy.
Maybe start 5 pots, maybe for hostess gifts or whatever.
Cindy, I might have lost you. I'm not hearing you
Yes.
right now. Okay.
Yes?
Are you there? I couldn't hear you. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. It goes in and out. I'm wondering if you should walk closer to your house if you're in your backyard.
I'm going to put my face right next to it.
Okay. Well, I'll go to the next slide, which happens to be maintaining.
Let me just say one more thing that I started. I was starting to say that something really fun to do is just take like maybe parsley, basil, and oregano or something like that. And then when you need a gift, you can take this as a gift to your to the hostess of a party or a birthday gift or whatever. People really like it. People are very impressed if you do things like that. So anyway, that's just an idea. Okay, take it away.
That's a good idea. We do have some little bottles that of dried herbs that I'll show again later too when we're in the kitchen portion of it. But
great gift.
Yeah, so you can do all that. So let's talk. Cindy mentioned a little bit about maintaining, about keeping them small when they're in the container. In fact, that sage layer in that previous photo on the side back there was a little lengthy, and I let it drape over. But you really don't want that to happen for too long. You want to make sure you can cut that off and use them, because maintaining herb gardens is real basic. It's not a lot of scientific combinations of fertilizers and potassium and nitrogen like Cindy was mentioning earlier. You just want to use them. So you want to pinch them back. This particular planter is Lovage, and Lovage is kind of like a parsley, kind of like a celery leaf. I use it in salads all year long. This is where those beautiful caterpillars harvest themselves, or they live in here in this pot. Every year they come back to it. That's where the butterflies lay their eggs, and then the caterpillars live. And you can't see on this particular plant, but you can tell when they're there because they start eating the leaves off from the top to the bottom. They like the tender new leaves on the top, and they go back to the bottom. So use your herbs. Of course, when they're on this plant, I'm not using the herb then. I just let it grow for them then. But it's a beautiful thing to watch. So I love, and I really like Lovage too. So what you want to do with your perennials, again, Mediterranean herbs, a perennial, divide them in the spring, like we talked about earlier. You want to take them out and you keep them healthy that way. You keep the energy on the herb, the hormones current, the essential oils and everything in the deepest way. So that's perennials. Have a plan for flowers. If your parsley is gonna flower, sometimes I fight it, which you'll see in another slide a little later, but I let them flower. I let it flower because my backyard is kind of have both. So if a chive starts to flower, unless it's brand new, I let it flower. And then I have one that's not flowering that I'm using. So sometimes it gets a little redundant because you think, okay, I've got these here and but I just kind of have both going, and it's part of that balance I was talking about earlier. So if you end up having flowers, it's a beautiful thing because you can put them in your salads and whatnot. I put pruning. you prune, but if you're using them, there's no need to prune unless, you know, I've seen some basil bushes get just huge and people cut them back, that kind of thing. I've never had that problem because I use every herb I grow. What we want to do in the winter with these perennials is let them rest. So that's where, if you haven't used them down to before they get woody, you're going to want to cut it back that way. Let them rest. That's what overwinterizing is. You want to let that happen. I make sure there's mulch around the plant because they'll come back next spring. My friends this year said, I don't know what to do. My tarragon never comes back. And I said, just wait. And 2 of them already came back to me and said, oh, you were right. My tarragon came back. So this is what we want to do. We want to be patient. We want to let them have their rest time because we all need our rest time, right? Annuals, they're not too much for maintaining. You plant them in the spring. Like I said, mine get the fertilizer from the tomato plants or whatever vegetables they're in there with. And I use them. Mine, I take them out at the end of the year. I think some people try to save them, but I don't know about that because I haven't done that. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about how do we harvest these things. And so this, before Cindy starts, you have a sunflower here. This is the parsley that is going to seed. So this is one of the plants that was in my backyard 2 years ago. So this is that's a flower starting. All those are going to be seeds. I let them flower because that's what those butterflies come for. And then they lay their eggs. So this is all part of a vicious cycle we have going, right, Cindy?
Yes. Harvesting seeds is kind of fun. And actually, at the herb garden that I have in San Carlos, I have a fennel plant, and I get butterflies on it.
Oh, all right.
I have some cocoons on the wall and around it, and so it's kind of fun, and it is blooming. I let it bloom because it's pretty, and it's a fennel that don't eat the bulb, you eat the leaves, the flowers. So anyway, so harvesting seeds. You want to harvest seeds like these seeds that you see here that Kathy showed you. Those seeds wouldn't be harvested until they were almost dead looking, very brown and ready to be, torn out or cut off. That's when we want to harvest the seeds. So we'd cut the stem off and put it in a brown paper bag and write on it what it is and when we harvested. And we would put a tie around it and just leave it. And then maybe in 2 or 3 weeks, we'd shake the bag and we'd listen to see if there's any seeds rattling around in the bag. And if we hear seeds, then we want to take those seeds out and we want to put them in an airtight container and mark the airtight container with the name of the seed and the date. And then they'll be ready to plant the next spring and we'll be able to start over again. Really collecting seeds is a lot of fun. And another thing about harvesting seeds or any kind of seed, if you want to guarantee that you're going to have a same plant as the mother plant, doing it by seed is not the way. Because you don't know if there's been some cross-pollination or what's happened. If you want to make sure that you have a clone of the mother plant, you need to take a cutting from the mother plant. And then you will have a plant that looks exactly like the mother plant, just to throw that in. But seeding is fun and it's cheap. You save a lot of money and it keeps you busy. So anyway, enjoy seeding. Kathy?
Another fun project. So let's see, how do we harvest these to use them? That went too far. That's too far. Let's see if it'll stop right there. There we go. So here's these plants here, the flowering chives. Those purple flowers are luscious. And you notice that chive is in the same pot with a little strawberry plant. So I let things mix like that. I've got a sage right now with a little strawberry plant. next to that is a tarragon, and next to that is lemon verbena, which lemon verbena, this is, the lemon verbena is at the St. Carlos Herb Garden. And so I just love that one there. I have a couple here at my house, but the St. Carlos one just grows and grows. So we need to get some stems off of that, Cindy.
I know, I cut it back.
And make tea. I make
cut it back since then.
I make a tea water out of that, and it's just delicious. So when you want to do this is usually in the morning after the dew dries. You're ready to harvest. I've got some Greek oregano in the backyard that's just ready to come in. So I'm going to be doing that tomorrow. But for large amounts, get at the peak flavor before the plant will start to flower. So the chives are kind of done here. Probably we're going to use this plant for flowers now, but that tarragon next to it is going right into the green goddess dressing or on some fish or something or whatever. However you want to use it, but it's a very delicate, yummy flavor. And the lemon verbena, I make drinks out of it. And so that's pretty amazing, I think. So anyway, so that's how that works. There are different ways. Of course, we're going to go over in a couple of minutes how to dry them if you're going to dry them and not use them fresh. As far as drying and fresh goes, I'll say this now because I'll probably forget, but usually when you're using your herbs to cook with, the dry herbs can go in at the beginning, like when you're making a sauce or a stew or something that's going to cook. The dry herbs, you put them in the palm of your hand and kind of gently squish them a little so the oils come out, and then put it in your food. Fresh herbs are best placed on a warm food after the food comes out, so it doesn't cook off so much. But whatever your preference is, you can do it any way you want, experiment and have fun with it. So this next slide has some mistakes and maybe you can pick them out, and I'll show you. The first one, the first plant over there is a parsley, and you're going, whoa, it's on a tree stalk, it looks like, huh? Parsley doesn't usually grow on a tree stalk. It doesn't. This is a parsley that started bolting or flowering way too early for me. And I wasn't aware of the 2-year sequence. And so I just kept fighting it, and I cut it off and cut it off and cut it off and fight that flower. But the parsley wasn't really tasting, it's flat leaf parsley. It wasn't really tasting as good as it could have, but I kept it going and I was really proud of it. It stayed green and all that. Well, I finally let it flower. I took that off, and I wanted to use it as a sample to show it's probably not a good idea to do it, but if you're into it, if you're into trying it, go ahead. You want to take your herbs in after you harvest them in the morning and rinse them and air dry them. And that's what we're doing here, but this isn't the ones that I would actually put in a jar. Now that next mess in the middle, that's lemon thyme. One of my favorite delicate herbs to use on veggies and fish. Lemon thyme is amazing. Eggs too. It's really good on eggs. But you see all that wood? I let my plant get really out of control. It was in a wine barrel thing, and I let it get huge. But what's happening there is it got very woody, and I had to cut it back. And you're not really supposed to cut back into the wood, but I had to clean it up. And so we gave it a good haircut, a good cleaning. And basically my message is just don't let your plant get to that. Don't let it do that if you have time, because if you have time for your time, make sure you maintain it and use it the way it should be used, and not when it all has that wood on it. Because thyme plants for the most part have wood at the bottom, like a lot of perennial herbs do, like lavender does. And what's next to that, and we call this cutting celery, and it really, if I let it grow up, it'd probably be a celery, but this is a wonderful little thing I learned from Cindy. She gave me a little jar of some dried cutting celery, and it stayed fragrant, and it was dried for a whole year. It was really good. So I was just drying a little bit of that over there with my two mistakes. So that's how we do that. Okay, so here's Cindy drying herbs.
One thing I really like to do is dry herbs. It's a nice way to preserve them and use them once they're past their prime. So the way I like to dry herbs, I mean, like Kathy said, you would pick the herbs in the morning because we want to pick in the morning we want to pick our propagation pieces, our things we're going to dry. Everything we do, we want to pick in the morning because the plant is still full of moisture. And we want to pick a nice, healthy, plump plant. Once the sun hits it, then the plant starts working, doing photosynthesis and all the good stuff it does. And the taste of the herb changes because things are going to different parts of the plant. Anyway, so pick it in the morning. Like Kathy said, wash it and dry it, and then make sure it's real dry. And then what I like to do is I like to take it off the stem because the stem contains some water too. And I want it to dry. I want the herbs to dry quickly. And what I dry them in is I'm not on screen, but I use a wire kind of dish, I guess, or a colander, I guess. And the colander is a wire, and so a lot of air circulation can come through. So I take the herbs off the stem, lay them in the wire.
Uh-oh. Are you there?
Just unmuting myself. Okay.
Okay.
So then you put the herbs in a kind of a dry, warm place, and the herbs should dry in like 2 or 3 days. So once the herbs dry, I just take my hand and run it over in this wire mesh, and the herbs come out, go through this kind of sieve thing, and they come out a perfect size. And so then I put them in a glass bottle and mark it and date it. And I have beautiful herbs, dried herbs for the next, the next year.
Mhm.
Dried oregano is really nice. It's really much nicer than fresh oregano. That's really one of the few herbs that is nicer dried than fresh. And there's police, the fire department's behind me. I don't know if you can hear them, but anyway, I really like doing it. It's a great way. It's a nice way to give a gift, is to give a gift of some dried oregano or something. Again, it's a really nice gift. And whoever you give it to will surely like it. And so that's how I dry herbs. Hanging them up, the problem I have with just hanging up, tying them like this picture, tying them up and hanging them, is that they're not in an airtight container. So as they're hanging in your kitchen, which isn't a good place to put them anyway, because of all the cooking oils and aromas and everything, it changes the herb.
Yeah, it does.
The herb is dry, and it loses its flavor without being in a plastic container. So that's why I don't do it this way. So anyway, that's drying herbs.
Oh, good.
Kathy?
I want to say one thing about drying herbs too, is when before I even became a master gardener, I would dry my herbs upside down like that. And then I learned, oh my gosh, Kathy, get them out of the kitchen. There's too many things going on in the kitchen. It's too active in there. And there's smokes and other food flavors and stuff. Put them in a closet. And I'm like, well, I don't really have a closet that I can designate to herbs, either hanging drying or put them on a screen and put them in there. So I don't have that. So how I dry my herbs is similar to Cindy. I just use like a cookie rack that has tight tines on it. And I put it on a jelly roll pan and make sure that they're dry before I rinse them, but make sure that they're dried before I put them on the rack and let them air dry. Now, I don't take them off the stem like Cindy. That's a much more efficient way to do it, but I wait and do it after. But as you see on the screen, I put air dry for 5 to 7 days. Well, that's a difference between where we live too. And I don't know, or maybe my space isn't as warm as Cindy's. I know I think she dries them out on that side window where she gets a lot of sun, or filtered sun maybe. I don't know. But anyway, so you're going to have to do it the way, check your house out and see how it works for you to dry them and what works, and probably try them on a rack and not necessarily hanging upside down somewhere.
Well,
Even though they're sold that way, they're pretty, but
The important thing is that you want air circulation through the herb as it's drying.
mhm,
So the wire,
rack works well.
wire rack or the wire basket or whatever, even a colander,
Mhm.
provides air circulating around that herb, and it will dry quicker, and you can get it into plastic and it will be more flavorful. That's the main thing.
Yeah. So now we have a little section about what do we do with all these herbs that we have, either fresh or dry, or, well, give me some ideas. How do I use them? Because so many people say, well, I have this, I have a neighbor, I have this Thai basil, and it's a nice big bush. It looks really nice, and it stayed from last year, and so I was suspect. And I said, that's Thai basil. And it is, huh? And he goes, well, actually, they kept their, the little sticker that goes with the plant, and it actually was oregano. So it tells me why it overwintered. He never cut it back, but it's kind of lost its flavor because it hadn't been worked. In other words, it hadn't been really used a lot where it cut back. And so the new plant, the new parts of the stems that came up weren't super flavorful because it was last year's growth. So my suggestion is always, and you probably can't see this, because always put some kind of a tag in your plant, so you know what it is you planted, because a lot of times the look may change, or you said, I thought I put mint over there, and it's marjoram or something. It's something else. So that's
Well,
all.
there's also, if you plant 3 or 4 different types of thyme, you won't know which is which. And that happened to me
Yes.
at the herb garden in San Carlos, because I put the growing tags, because I didn't have signs at the time,
Mhm.
and they all disappeared. So now I am trying to figure out which is which time is which, so I could put the correct sign on now that I have signs.
You have to taste
Yeah.
them. So here's
Yeah.
my favorite, lemon thyme. This is my favorite. Again, and this one doesn't have all the wood. This is a new plant.
Mhm.
But I have to make sure I put in the ground. I have to
Yeah.
make sure I plant. So let's get some ideas going here. Recipe ideas.
Yeah.
Because here on this one side, we have lemon balm, orange mint, all different, some different varieties. Like Cindy said, there's different times. Well, there's different mints, there's all sorts of stuff, and marjoram and gem marigold. That's one of the edible flowers we have. In the back of me here, I have a lot of different calendula varieties that I got at the Garden Education Center yesterday, and just a lot of little edible goodies and things. So we have a lot of things to share with you of what to do. And the first one, Cindy loves this one.
This is an idea for a Bouquet Garni. And it's made with a leek. So you would buy a leek, and you would take the outside leaf, the biggest leaf, and then you would wash it, and you would put in what you want to put in, a bay leaf, garlic, thyme, or whatever you want to put in. And then you would fold it over, then fold it up, and then tie it, and use it instead of cheesecloth, and drop it into your soup or stew or whatever you're making. It works really well, and it's very tasty. And you don't have to worry about buying cheesecloth, which I can never find anyway. So I can find leeks easier than cheesecloth.
Mhm.
So that's
Yeah.
a fun thing to do.
I like to use a kitchen twine, a kitchen string, and I tie whatever I group together, and then I can just fish it out in one
Yeah,
scoop.
the leek gives it a little more flavor.
Yeah.
There's
Oh yeah.
a super broth, and it does hold them in place. So just something to do.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
Okay, cool. Well, and one thing that I started doing is making vinegars. So we do these vinegars, and it's not a set recipe. None of these are set recipes, but you just get a couple handfuls of fresh herbs, whatever flavor you think you might want to use. And use your imagination. Tarragon is big. Again, I like tarragon, and this is in probably the same as the picture there. This is a tarragon vinegar I use probably with either a white wine vinegar or apple cider vinegar. You can use any type of wine you want. Another one that I do, this one is pineapple mint. That Cindy has some pineapple mint. And I put this one in apple cider vinegar. And so you can do whatever you want with vinegars, and you let it sit in a jar or something in your pantry where it's cooler, no sun is going to be on it. And, I put for 1 or 2 months because it can just stay there. And then when you bottle it in something decorative, you're going to give it away. I don't put the herb in there, the herb sprig in there until I give it to someone. So, because then it gets kind of, they can get old, they can get old. And one time I had a big batch of some tarragon vinegars and wanted to give it at Christmas. So I didn't have any fresh tarragon at Christmas. So I, went and bought some organic tarragon at the grocery store and put it in there just so it was inside the, inside the bottle. Anyway.
Yeah, I think sometimes we do have to buy at the grocery store during the winter months when our herbs are dormant.
I think so too.
And, but the herbs that you buy at the grocery store, if you don't use them all, you can always dry them. If you don't use all of the tarragon that you bought and you don't think you're going to be using it the next few days, dry it and, save it and use it dried. Anyway,
yeah.
So
although I will say
salt,
tarragon tastes better fresh than dried. But, it's a personal taste thing too. So just go for it.
But I mean, in the middle of winter,
Yeah, I agree.
Sometimes you got to do what you got to do. But anyway, herb salts. Salt, you could flavor salt with anything. You can use sugar too. Sugar and lavender, sugar and mint, very nice. So, the way you would do this is you would place a half a cup of sea salt and a half a cup of herbs in a bowl of the food processor, and then whirl it into salt, and then lay it out on some paper towels and a baking sheet and let it really dry. Let the mixture dry because those herbs had water in them. And you're going to end up with a clumpy salt mixture if you don't. So if you let them dry really nice, they will make a really nice seasoning salt. So when you salt, use your favorite herbs. If it's basil or thyme or whatever, this would be really good with oregano.
Oh, it would.
You could just season your food with it. You can also do you could also make up little salt mixtures, or not salt mixtures, but herb mixtures. With you can make an Italian seasoning herb with your herbs that you've grown, or an herbs de Provence with lavender and the other herbs that you've grown. So yeah, you be creative with your herbs, and they'll really reward you greatly. So.
Yeah, one time you gave me, Cindy, when we first met, a rosemary salt, a finishing salt, a rosemary finishing salt, and it was great on potatoes. Yeah. Anything, it was perfect. So thank you. So what do we have next? Oh, this might be my beverages one. And so this is what I do with the lemon verbena. I mean, I stuck a lot of things in there. In the glass. I'm sorry, I got distracted because there's this huge, and I don't know what it is, turkey vulture or something in the trees behind my house. And I'm looking out the window. So I'm looking at him. He had a huge wingspan. Probably not be eating my herbs, huh? Yeah. But anyway, so what I do with, I just make a lemon verbena tea. This is the lavender lemonade, but this is a recipe. And you can do that later. Because you will get these slides, so you'll have that. But I don't really do all that. I just put the lemon verbena leaves in the water and make it like a sun tea. I put it outside in a glass jar, and lemon verbena tea is just refreshing. I always have it in my fridge and I just love it. So, and you can do anything like that with different mints and different flavors. Cindy uses fruits, right? Cindy, tell them what you do.
It's great to make ice cubes out of
Uh-huh.
herbs. You would boil water, and you'd fill half the ice cube tray with the boiled water, let it cool, and then put some mint or rosemary or whatever you want. And I would put probably on the sweeter side, maybe lavender or mint or something like that. Then put it in the freezer, let it freeze, then put the balance of the water over the top, and you have ice cubes with herbs in it. That's very impressive when you have guests and drop these ice cubes, with herbs in them. The guests are very impressed, and it tastes good when the ice cube melts, the herb flavors, whatever your, the water or whatever. It's really very nice.
It's yummy. So, one thing I didn't say while we were talking about the different herbs, the lavenders that we have, I have several lavenders at my house, and you saw that big strip in the front. That's a regular Angustifolia lavender, and it is out where all the sun and there's wind and everything is there, and it flourishes there. It loves it. I also have what I call my edible lavender. Now that lavender out front, I process it for sachets and gifts. And if someone's having a baby shower, my friends now, their kids are starting to have kids. So if there's a baby shower, I give them about however many, 25 or something sachets, and they give them as little gifts for their guests and bring them places and give them to people like Cindy's talking about, a little lavender sachet. But the edible lavender, because we would make, when we do this class live, we make a lavender shortbread. Cindy does, or I make these lavender muffins, and we make things. And the lavender has to sit in the sugar, like as Cindy said. And I use a different variety. I use something called Thumbelina, which is a small lavender plant, as opposed to the big perennial, the big ones that you see out front. So I make it different. And I don't know if it's just because out front, my lavender plants are in the wind, and I don't know what's out there. I know there's no sprays, but I just kind of wanted to make sure what we're eating is 100% lavender. So anyway, so I do it that way. So there, you can have fun with it with your different, there's so many different lavenders. Just experiment, see what works for you best.
Lavender is great for baking.
Yeah.
There's so many recipes that use lavender.
Really good.
Yeah, lavender is a wonderful, wonderful herb to have in your garden, not just for looks and smell, but also for taste. I'd also say I make sachets out of, I have.
The rose petals.
Yes, rose petals. I have Cecil Bruner roses. I don't know if any of you have that. They're little pink roses that are blooming right now, and they are the most fragrant roses, and they keep their smell after the leaves fall, the petals fall off the branches, but they make great potpourris too. Here's a tiny sachet, like what Cindy's talking about, and there's lavender in this one, and this one was something about a baby girl, because it was my friend's thing. But so you just put them in here. These keep for years, and you put them in your suitcase or a top drawer or something, and all you have to do is squish it. You squish it, it gets the oils flowing again, and it smells like it's brand new fresh. Make your undies smell good. Yes, makes your undies smell good. I think we're gonna need to go to lunch though. Whoops, wait, where'd that go? Let's see if I can get it. So this is our last one on the photo slides is a salad, and that just has all sorts of leaves, herb leaves, tender lettuce, edible flowers of your choice. Of course, you see the nasturtiums and the pansies, and let's see, I have a pansy right here that I plant around my backyard, and the yellow one's already planted, but I couldn't bring it in the house. But anyway, so you can do wonderful things. And the little ones, let's see if I can
I can get this for you, because the small ones, these are,
Those are wild lavenders.
no, this right here is rose scented geraniums, believe it or not, I
Oh.
think.
There is a wild,
Maybe that's right here, the wild lavender.
also,
Yeah.
but they, once you have one, you have them all over your garden, so
Oh,
be careful.
yeah. Yeah. No, I use the rose scented geraniums. It doesn't really have a lot of flavor, but it's just a different flower in there. I needed a picture for demo.
Mhm.
And you see this leaf right here where the red thing is, Eric, where the red thing is,
Mhm.
that's a nasturtium leaf, and that's a smaller one. And the
Yeah.
other nasturtium we saw on the slideshow is a Alaska mix
Mhm.
nasturtium, and it's very tender. The variegated leaf is very tender and yummy to eat. So you can add fresh herbs of your choice to any kind of a salad. And so that's what I highly recommend. So who wants to go to lunch? Well,
There you go.
and what we're going to take some questions, but actually what I want to tell you here is on our reference sheet. Cindy and I have years of experience growing herbs in our homes and sharing with each other. We met each other, I don't know how many years ago. I won't say it because it'll give away our age. But anyway, we just have a lot of fun with it. And we do have 2 sets of notes from UC, environmental horticulture notes and landscaping with herbs, that we like to share. They're being upgraded, I believe, because this link won't take you there. It's going to say can't be found, but we're rewriting them and they'll get put on the website again. I'm not quite sure where they'll get put on. So we might want to, I just wanted to keep this link so we could maybe get it to the same place. I don't know if I can, but I just wanted to tell you that you won't be able to open that right now from our website. And I just want to thank Linkso and Can for hosting us. And I don't want to speak for Cindy, but I know we had a great time, and all the photos from our gardens and from Elkis Ranch, which is a ranch the master gardeners use that's in Pescadero, and it's lovely. It's a beautiful place. And I think we're ready for some questions. Here's our website. It's hard to see that in the blue, but you can email questions or go to our website, San Mateo, San Francisco, or smsf-mastergardeners.ucanr.edu to find us. And so I guess it looks like we have some questions, either that or a lot of fun comments.
Yep, let's start with some questions from the beginning of your talk here.
Okay.
Let's talk about rosemary. Can rosemary be propagated through cuttings? That's one of the questions, by the way.
Oh, that's a question?
Mhm.
Yes, that's the question.
It can be.
Yes. Oh, Cindy, you go for it. You were cutting.
It can be. It's a semi-wood cutting. So how I would propagate rosemary, a lot of people think if you just stick it in a glass of water, it will work, but we don't do water because it forms the aquaphobic type root, which is very thin and fragile, and it usually breaks when you try to plant. So we don't do that. So you take a rosemary, not the bottom of the rosemary, but the tip of the rosemary, and you take about 5 inches, maybe 6 inches, and then you clear the leaves off. That's something I didn't say earlier. You need to clear all the leaves off. I guess I did, of the rosemary. And then you're going to make 2 cuts.
Okay, so I can't hear you.
Might go up a little bit, and where they're going to cut right below. You cut right below that. Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay. And then you're going to have a tip, and you're going to have a second part. So you're going to have a softwood part, and you're going to have a semi-softwood part, and you're going to plant both of those. So you're going to take the tip about 2 inches from the top and cut below a leaf, and that goes into the root hormone and into the soil. And then you take the next section and do the same thing. Put it in root hormone and put it in soil. they're two different types of cuttings, but they both have meristemic fluid in them, and they should work. So like I said, try several of them. Don't just do 2 or 1, and give it a try.
We did a similar situation with that with lavender a long time ago.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
it worked too. So, okay.
Okay, and follow up on the rosemary. Can rosemary be overwintered inside the house in cold areas?
I keep all mine outside, and although I'm not in a real freezing point, I'm in San Bruno, but in the
Where does the person live? Do you know, Cam?
I don't. I'm
Okay.
guessing generally in a cold area, you know, if you have I know rosemary is pretty hard, so I'm not sure.
Does the
Yeah.
person live in San Francisco?
Well, I would cut it back like
I'm not sure what you mean by cold area.
well, if it freezes, that's what I mean. That's what
Rosemary,
I'm thinking.
yeah, rosemary's pretty hardy. I wouldn't leave it out in the snow, or I don't know what area. If it's a Bay Area, it'll be fine outside.
Yeah, I would just winterize it, protect the mulch it, bring it down a little bit so it's not quite as large. People have it in their landscape in the fronts of houses and
Yeah,
things.
it's very hardy.
Yeah, so I would just not worry about it. Well, easy for me to say, right?
Yeah. No, rosemary's pretty hardy.
Okay, they're saying that they live in New Mexico at 5,000 feet and they go below 0.
So I have an idea for this one. They should call their local master gardener group and
Okay.
see how to do it that way if you're in New Mexico, probably, because we're just taught for this mid part of California.
Yeah. And Cindy, you were mentioning a coffee plant at the beginning of the talk. Does that have to be housed inside?
No.
Okay.
There is an outside native coffee plant. We have one at the Native Plant Garden in San Carlos City Hall, and it's doing very well.
Coffee berry.
So it's a native plant. It's not the plant that they grow in Colombia or anything. It's a decorative plant. It's not a coffee plant per se. It will grow beans and all that, but it's not meant for roasting. And it grows very well outside.
Okay. All right. So moving on to a next question. What do you use for mulch, especially in an organic garden?
Well, you can use hay, straw, that kind of thing too. And I use tree garden mulch that I buy at a local garden supply store.
I like
What was that?
redwood bark.
Yeah,
I know that's not always going to be sustainable, but I like it. I like it because it degrades and feeds the soil. What do you use, Kathy?
I use the tree arbor mulch that I get down the road there at our local place.
Down the road.
Yeah, I love it. I use it front and back. I use it in containers. I use it on the ground. You know, we had some work done.
I like it.
The guy brought some other mulch for me and put it on the side, another part of my house. And I'm like, no, that's not the same. Anyway, he didn't go where I go. He shopped somewhere else.
What I would say about mulch is don't buy the painted mulch.
Yeah.
Don't buy the black mulch. Don't buy the red mulch. Don't buy the plastic mulch. Buy some kind of wood mulch.
Some kind of tree mulch. You know, at the garden.
Your plants will appreciate it.
At the Garden Education Center, we put straw on top of everything. And I guess.
You have another question, Cam?
Yes. Okay. Let's move on. Let's move on to another question here. So, what are your thoughts about drying the herbs in a microwave?
Drying them in the microwave?
Yeah.
Dan, I would rather do it in the oven, bake them in the oven, than the microwave. I think they'd get drier and be more flavorful. You could do the microwave. You could use a dehydrator. Dehydrators work great.
Freezers. I just
great
love-
success with the
Mhm. I like the mare dried, and the flavor is just 100% then.
Yeah.
But try different ways, experiment at your house and see what works for you.
Okay, moving on to another question here. So,
Yeah, experiment,
Yeah.
have some fun.
okay. So this person have tried to propagate several different plants over the past few years, mostly herbs, and not a single cutting ever grows roots. What could they have been doing wrong?
Why don't you unmute that person?
That's
so
gonna be fun. I'm not sure if they want to hop on, but let me see.
Oh, okay. Well, it depends on what you're propagating. You have to make sure that you don't, after you propagate, you don't put it in hot sun. You want to keep it cool and you want to keep it damp. And you want to make sure there's a node in the soil.
Mhm. They can always send their
I
question.
don't know.
They can always send their question to this email address on this screen right here. If they can see it, it's in blue, but I can repeat it if you need that. And they can send it and our helpline will answer, research us out and find us and be able to answer it. So we can get more specific with you. Like,
Yes,
what type of plants? Are they perennials? Are they, what time of year are you doing it? You know, all of that.
exactly. It all makes a difference. What part of the plant are you using? All makes a difference. So,
And Kathy, I think that's pretty much the last question there, but let's read the email out to folks. Is it mgsmsf@ucanr.edu? Is that what I'm seeing there?
That's correct. And that'll go to our live helpline places are these 3 locations. I don't think we're live yet. I think we're still doing it.
not
Yeah, I think we're still doing it online. And so we'll do it that way until they announce that there'll be people in the helpline. A lot of times people would just come into the helpline area if they live close to it.
and
But an email question with a photo works great. Or even if you don't have a photo, know when you're asking a question, know the variety of plant that you're asking about. So you can tell us, so we can brainstorm it.
also I run a plant clinic at San Mateo Arboretum once a month. Samples of things that are troubling you in or questions. Just bring your samples in a plastic bag so that we don't contaminate the whole arboretum. And I'm usually there first or second Sunday of every month, except for the winter months. So drop by and see me.
Alrighty. Well, I think that's pretty much all the questions there. Thank you so much, Cindy and Kathy. Both of you did fabulous.
Thank
If
you.
there are any other questions, we've got the resources here. Feel free to text, call, or email, and the Master Gardeners will address your questions hopefully right away. But I know you guys only work maybe 3 days a week. Is that right? Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, or there's different locations?
Oh, on these locations, it says Mondays 9 to 4 at Elkus, Wednesdays at San Francisco Botanical, and Thursdays at Veterans, but I know Veterans is not open. I don't think any of these locations are open right now. Am I wrong? I don't know. Maybe the
Elkus is open, and I believe a botanical garden is open, but Veterans is remodeling, and so we're not there.
Are they open with helpline people in there?
I'm sure we have helplines going at Elkus.
Oh, okay, because I thought it was Zoom, but I'm not Zoom.
Because I was in the office. There's an office.
Okay.
And Cindy, could you repeat where you were mentioning what the place was? Is that San Mateo Arboretum or something like that? You cut out there.
In Central Park in San Mateo, and I'm in the Arboretum by the Cole Pump House, where the nursery is. San Mateo Garden Club sells plants every Sunday. And once a month, I'm there to answer questions with my team. And be happy to answer your questions, bring your samples or whatever, and we do our very best to set you straight. So
Okay, fabulous. Well, thank you both very much. And this class will be available on our website. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Pam. Thanks, everyone. Bye, friends.